Again, welcome. My name is Emily Lipstrew, and I am the Policy Director here for OEFFA. And before we get started, it's really my great pleasure to introduce you to the rest of the policy team. So I'm going to let you guys just pop in and introduce yourselves.
Hey everybody, I am Heather Dean. I'm a grassroots policy organizer, and a lot of my work is really focused around the Farm Bill, and I'm really excited to be here tonight.
Hi all, I'm Julia Barton with OEFFA. I serve as Organic Policy Specialist, and I'm also happy to be here. Good to see you all.
Hi, I'm Lauren Hurdle. I'm also a grassroots policy organizer, and I focus mostly on state work, particularly on soil health at the moment.
Thank you guys. And I also just want to give a shout out to Milo Petrozello. Milo is on a vacation day and traveling and still joining us. So we really appreciate you very much, Milo. Thank you for being here. Before we get started, I want to ground us all in one of OEFFA's fundamental beliefs, which is that all living things have intrinsic value, that we're part of an ecosystem, and we exist in community connected with and dependent upon land, water, air, animals, and other people, all of which require our care and gratitude. They're not commodities to exploit. So thank you again for joining us. I'm going to just share a quick overview of the Farm Bill, why it's important that we're talking about it now. I'm going to cover just a few of the what we thought were really important wins in the last Farm Bill. And then Heather is going to provide the backdrop for the development of this platform, after which we'll have a brief overview of each of the 5 priority areas for OEFFA's Farm Bill platform. We will also have a couple of breakout groups to talk about each of these 5 issues, brainstorm some next steps, after which Heather and I will wrap up our meeting for tonight. So we're going to be concise and informative, and we'll have a couple of spots for questions. So please, if you have questions, type them in the chat, write them down. We want to make sure to hear from you tonight as well. So now, what is the Farm Bill and why is it important? If the food and agriculture system is represented by a house, the Farm Bill is the foundation. It provides the structure for what is grown, how it's grown, as well as who produces it and who gets to consume it. It's also a major commitment by the U.S. government and by extension, taxpayers, to support farmers, to provide nutrition assistance, to fund commodity and crop insurance subsidies, provide funding for conservation, rural broadband, renewable energy, and many other programs. It's a very large bill with 12 different titles that is in effect for about 5 years, and it sets national priorities for food and agriculture. The last Farm Bill was called the Agricultural Improvement Act, and it was signed into law in 2018. That bill is going to expire on September 30th next year. And work on this new Farm Bill has already begun. As you'll see in the second slide here, Lauren, if you want to advance it, 4 of the 12 titles make up 99% of all Farm Bill spending. Nutrition, which really is SNAP or what used to be called food stamps, comprises about 75% of the Farm Bill. Crop insurance subsidies are 9%. Commodity payments, which are price income support and disaster assistance, is 7%, and all the conservation programs make up 7% also. As we go into the next Farm Bill, nutrition is likely to remain the bulk of Farm Bill spending, and there may also be an increased emphasis on conservation to address some of the issues of water quality and climate change. It's more important than ever that we think about how to make the food system more resilient, and that will require reorienting our priorities about those things I mentioned before: what we grow, how and where we process and distribute food, and who we support in the process. Should most of the spending on our food system go to subsidies? If we combine commodity payments and some of the subsidies I just mentioned, that totals almost 23%, which is most of the non-nutrition title spending in the Farm Bill. We can see what some of those consequences are on the ground. So Lauren, if you want to move ahead to our next slide, I'm just going to briefly talk about some of the things that we won in the last Farm Bill. And this is really important because, so often this feels so big. It is big, but it feels really far removed. It feels like we may have no effect on what happens, but we can, and we did last time, and we need to keep doing it. One of the things that you'll hear me say a few times in the next few slides that's on the screen in front of you is mandatory money. And I want to just take a minute to talk about that. Unless you have a program that gets $50 million a year of funding in the Farm Bill, you're not mandatory. You can get a pet project or a new program authorized in the Farm Bill, but all that means is you have the right to ask for money every year. And it's really, really hard to get that money, especially if you don't have mandatory money. If you get to that $50 million a year mark and you have mandatory Farm Bill money, that also means that that program is a permanent part of the Farm Bill going forward in perpetuity. So Lauren, if you could advance to the next slide. In the 2018 Farm Bill, the LAMP program, which is really what comprises the local and regional food systems programming in the Farm Bill, got to that point of $50 million. I mean, there's still so much more work we have to do, but that is huge. It really shouldn't be understated, because now at least we don't have to fight for the existence of these programs every 5 years. We can work to increase their funding, to make them work better, to be more effective. And that's what we're going to talk about doing today. But the local ag market program created programs like the Farmers Market and Local Food Promotion Program, the Regional Food Systems Partnership Program, which was new in the last Farm Bill and brought together kind of public and private entities for some partnerships. And then the Value Added Producer Program is another important one that gives producers the opportunity to add value to existing products and command a higher price for those products. So getting to that 50 million for local and regional food systems was huge. Laura, next slide, please. Organic agriculture. While organic foods are growing faster than any other sector of the economy, investments in research and organic certification just have not kept pace. OEFFA, in partnership with the National Organic Coalition and the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, both of which we're members of, fought hard for increases in organic research in the 2018 Farm Bill. And we got those increases. The flagship research program is called the Organic Research and Extension Initiative, OREI. As of where we're at right now, that program will have $50 million and will be a permanent part of the Farm Bill. Next slide, Lauren. The next area that was a win last time was funding for beginning and underserved farmers. They did something a little different in the last Farm Bill. They combined BFRDP, which is the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program, major program that provides grants to train and support beginning farmers. We've got Robin Hackett on the call, who along with Lainey runs our Begin Farming program for OEFFA. We're only able to do that because this program is part of the Farm Bill. And I'm going to just back up a minute and say that this program, along with the Conservation Stewardship Program, are two critical conservation programs and programs for beginning farmers that were created because of groups like the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition and the Land Stewardship Project out of Minnesota. So we wouldn't have these things if these groups didn't push and show up and advocate and demand and work over the years to ensure increased funding and to make sure these programs work better and improved over time. But what they did in the last Farm Bill is they combined what was called the 2501 program, which provides support for underserved farmers, with the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program, so that it could get to that $50 million point, which it's at now. And it's called the Farming Opportunity Training and Outreach Program, or FOTO. And that is a critical program to provide investments in training and access to crop insurance. And it includes some policies to address one of the most critical issues beginning farmers face, which is access to affordable farmland. And obviously, that's an issue that still needs a lot more attention. Next slide, please, Lauren. And then when it comes to healthy food access and urban agriculture, there were some really important changes and wins in the last 2018 Farm Bill. It authorized a new produce prescription pilot. So healthcare professionals can prescribe fresh fruits and vegetables to improve health. The bill created, and that was part of the FINI funds. The bill also created an urban, indoor, and other emerging ag production research, extension, and education initiative. It's a little bit too long, but a really important program for urban agriculture especially. Got $10 million in mandatory funding as a start, and it includes an official office at USDA with a 15-member advisory committee, along with the creation of 10 pilot urban and suburban county committees. I'm pretty sure we've got at least one or two people who serve on one of those committees on our call tonight. So one more example I just want to share here is that in the last Farm Bill, there was some language that instructed USDA to allow farmers markets to operate an individual EBT, or electronic benefit transfer device, for accepting SNAP benefits at more than one location. That might not sound like a big deal, but farmers markets struggled for a long time. They didn't want to have to purchase EBT machines, pay for internet access at every single site. So that's something that resolved a long-standing barrier for communities working to increase access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And it's a good example of how, this program has really direct and real world implications. Next slide, Lauren. This last piece here that I'm going to talk about is just a little bit of the process, the players in Ohio, and the timeline. Now, I mentioned some of those programs in local and regional food systems. One of the reasons we have those programs is because of Senator Sherrod Brown. He has championed local and regional food system capacity building and business development programs in the past several Farm Bills. I know he's working on a marker bill right now to improve local and regional food systems in the LAMP program in the next Farm Bill. On the House Ag Committee, we have Chantel Brown from the Cleveland area, who's a relatively new representative. On House Ag, Troy Balderson, who's from kind of central Ohio. and Marcy Captor from the Toledo area. Those are the Ohio's congressional delegation that are appointed to agriculture committees. That doesn't mean we don't target people whose names aren't on there. So really, anybody who's a senator or a representative in Ohio can hear from their members about these priorities and about what's important to them. In terms of the process, I mentioned that the Farm Bill, the current Farm Bill expires in September of next year. The members of Congress are having listening sessions across the country right now. There was one in Northwest Ohio last week where a couple of our members provided testimony. And marker bills have been and will be introduced. And just, there's a lot of weird terminology. Marker bills are just like bills that these legislators introduce, not even intending for them to pass necessarily, but they introduce them to see how many co-sponsors they can get. How much does their community, their constituents, and organizations across the country support those bills so that they can maybe move forward and become a part of the overall Farm Bill? So that's a little bit about the Farm Bill, why it matters, the timeline, and some of the players here in Ohio. I'm going to turn it over to Heather in just a second. I just wanted to pause and see if there were any questions. Well, keep thinking, type any questions in the chat, and I'm going to let Heather take us to the next step.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk just a little bit about OEFFA's Farm Bill process over the past year or so. I started my job as a grassroots organizer last September. And a lot of my focus has been to get ready for this Farm Bill campaign. We really wanted to get a good sense of what our members want and need from the Farm Bill. So we decided to hold listening sessions, both virtual and in person at different locations throughout the state. We had a session in Yellow Springs, one in Newark, one in Worcester, and then we also did a virtual session that was specifically to hear the concerns of BIPOC farmers. And I think that probably some of the people who are on this call were at one of those listening sessions. And so we're very grateful for your participation in those. We also did a Farm Bill ballot at our annual conference where we asked our members to rank what their priorities would be for the Farm Bill. And then we did an online survey just to go into a little bit more depth on some of the issues. And so once we had all of the results from the listening sessions and the surveys and the ballots, we compiled all of that information and tried to synthesize it into what would become the 5 key priorities for our 2023 Farm Bill work. And Lauren, if you want, you could go ahead and advance that slide. So this slide shows the 5 priorities that we listed, that are, again, based on the, much input from our members, both farmers and people who are not farmers. First, to promote soil health and climate resilience through conservation policy. Increasing investment in local and regional food systems. Addressing consolidation in the food and agriculture system, investing in organic and sustainable research, and providing more support for beginning and BIPOC farmers. And excuse me just a second. And so what we're going to be doing now that we have sort of these 5 priorities that are being released today as part of our Farm Bill platform is to form working groups for each of these 5 priorities who are going to be meeting throughout this fall to learn more about these issues in greater detail and also to develop some strategies for how to move forward on them. And what we're going to do right now is just give a very brief summary of each of these different priorities for you. And then after that, we're going to be going into breakout groups to go a little bit deeper on that. And in the breakout groups, you'll have the option of selecting which of these topics is of most interest to you. And after you've learned more about these topics, I would hope that you would consider joining one of the working groups that I mentioned, and I will be saying a little bit more about that at the end. So Lauren, could you go ahead and move to the next slide? I'm going to jump right in now and talk just a little bit about climate and soil health and conservation programs. So, you know, the climate crisis has increasingly been in the news, and when we hear about on the news the relationship between agriculture and climate, it's mostly bad. The news is mostly bad because we know that farmers in the West are facing fires and drought. And here in Ohio, farmers are having problems with too much water on their fields, or hot nights that are putting stress on crops and livestock. And we know that conventional agriculture is contributing to the problem of climate change, whether it be from methane gases that are released from food waste or from factory farms, or conventional nitrogen fertilizers. We also know that a lot of the current soil management practices that are being used can result in carbon that had been in the soil actually being released into the atmosphere and contributing to warming. So, and we also know that the way that we package and store and transport our food has a huge carbon footprint. So all of these things together, we know that that our current food and agriculture is both a cause of the climate crisis, and also that it's not going to be sustainable in the long run because of the climate crisis. But what is less widely known is that agriculture, and specifically I mean here the kind of agriculture that OEFFA advocates for, can actually be part of the solution. Organic and ecological systems that are based on soil health, on pasture-based grazing, on perennial crops and agroforestry, all of those things have the potential to draw carbon out of the atmosphere back into the soil where it belongs. When we're farming sustainably, we are actually helping to reduce greenhouse gases. And yet agriculture is often overlooked in discussions of climate solutions. And that's why we're pretty excited about this upcoming farm bill, because we think that this is one very important place where we can begin to get some support that we need to turn agriculture into a solution rather than having it be part of the problem. We want to make sure that the farm bill also supports the farmers who are already feeling the effects of climate change, and that they have support to make their farms more resilient, whether it be with on-farm energy production, research on resilient seeds and breeds, or technical assistance to adapt to changing conditions. And also that the farm bill should help us to build strong local food systems that are capable of withstanding multiple stresses that may be arising because of climate change. So all three of those things are going to be really important pieces, critical pieces of our climate response. Lauren, you could go ahead and advance to the next slide. So for our work that we are doing on climate in the Farm Bill, we are very fortunate that we already have somewhat of a blueprint for that work. Emily mentioned earlier about marker bills, which are pieces of legislation that basically outline key points that we would like to see in the Farm Bill. So we have a marker bill that is called the Agriculture Resilience Act, or otherwise known as the ARA. which was introduced by Representative Pingree of Maine, who herself is an organic farmer. And that marker bill basically acts as an outline of what we want to see happen in related to agriculture and climate change. It could include things like more research for things like perennial crops and more resilient seeds and breeds, support for conservation practices like cover cropping that improve soil health, measures to protect farmland and improve farm viability, support for pasture-based grazing and renewable on-farm farm energy, and also programs that would help to address food loss and food waste. So we currently are working to get members of Ohio's congressional delegation to sign on as co-sponsors to this bill. And if you have an interest in working on that or in learning more about the ARA, I hope that you'll be in touch with me. I would love to talk to you a little bit more about this. And then I'm going to pass it to my colleague Lauren for just a moment, because she is also hard at work on state soil health programs, which is not directly related to the Farm Bill, but it definitely is related to soil and climate.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, just a few things to say. Like Heather said, I focus more on state policy work, while she works more on the federal side of things. I just wanted to give you an update on the work that I'm doing. Specifically, I'm working with 4 different state soil or OEFFA soil health ambassadors who are located in different parts of the state and have different operations and are different points in their careers. And what they do is they work with me to work with other farmers to get more involved in healthy soil practices and help me and each other come up with new ways to work together to just get those practices kind of more ubiquitous in farming. Another update and thing that we're working on right now was Representative Juanita Brent introduced House Bill 669, which would start a soil health task force in the state. And so we're not sure where that's going to go. So we're also working on different trajectories for how we want to move forward with prioritizing soil health in Ohio. I also wanted to plug a quick save the date for a screening of the film Kiss the Ground on Sunday, October 30th. And there'll be more details about that. But yeah, if you're interested in working with me on state soil health work, just let me know. And I guess I'll pass it on to Emily next.
Thank you, Lauren. We're really glad to have you doing that state soil health work. And I just wanted to say the Ag Resilience Act that Heather mentioned, so far the only member of the Ohio delegation to sign on in support of that bill is Congressman Tim Ryan. So we're really looking to get more people on board with that. So I talked about local and regional food systems a little bit already. That is one of our 5 Farm Bill priorities. I'll just say that, you know, in the 20 or so years since I started working on food and ag issues, local and regional food systems have really come a long way. You know, we have a proliferation of local markets. We have more producers selling into wholesale and institutional markets. In Ohio, we, as I said, have a champion in providing resources for these local regional markets, which is Senator Sherrod Brown. But some of the 4 programs that I mentioned that are now instituted were created by Senator Brown with the input from Ohio stakeholders, as well as some national groups, whether it's the Farmers Market, Local Food Promotion Program, Regional Food Systems Partnership Program, Value Added Producer Grant Program, or other new initiatives. There's a lot of opportunity that just didn't exist before. But we know that there's still many barriers for farmers who sell into local and regional markets, whether it's accessing the markets, getting the price point needed to sustain a living, being able to find and pay farm labor, being able to get access to the kind of processing that they might need to get into different kinds of markets. And certainly for people who are food insecure, being able to have access to healthy, locally and regionally produced food. So some of that relates to the structure of the food system, or the foundation of the house that I mentioned earlier. And I'm going to move on. If you want to go to the next slide, Lauren, some of that relates to the structure of the food or ag system. I'm sorry I said that. And the other side of the local food systems coin relates to our next priority, and that is food system consolidation. While many of you on our meeting tonight likely know some of the statistics around food systems concentration, there was an investigation last year by The Guardian and Food and Water Watch that found that consumer choice is largely an illusion. Despite the supermarket shelves that we see and refrigerators brimming with so many different brands, a handful of powerful companies control the majority market share of almost 80% of so many dozens of grocery items. For 85% of the groceries, 4 companies or less controlled more than 40% of the market share. The retail side is dominated by companies such as Kraft, Heinz, General Mills, ConAgra, Unilever, and Del Monte. When it comes to beef processing, 4 companies control 73% of the market: JBS, Tyson, Marfrig, and Cargill. Soybean processing is controlled by 4 companies that make up 80% of that industry. ADM, Cargill being a couple of those 4. And even our seed industry is highly concentrated and controlled by Bayer, Corteva, and ChemChina or Syngenta. We're often told that this high level of consolidation makes our food system more efficient and affordable. But the reality is, it makes us sick. It makes farmers go out of business, and it makes our food system more vulnerable to collapse. I should mention too that, for those 4 large meat processing companies, that was beef. It's almost as concentrated for poultry and other industries where farmers have to operate under contract. They're not allowed to talk about their contracts, the terms of their contracts. They don't have control over much because the companies supply the chicks, they supply the feed, they supply, a lot of the nutrition. The farmers have to supply the most expensive things like the land, the barns, and the ongoing management. So it's not a fair and transparent system. Markets and corporations should be tools for the use and benefit of all of us. They should be inclusive, transparent, recognize natural limits, and benefit regional and diverse communities. Our current market fails that test. If we want to get to OEFFA's vision of a future where sustainable and organic farmers thrive, local food nourishes our communities, and agricultural practices protect and enhance our environment, then we need to start with rebuilding the foundation and ultimately addressing all of the issues on OEFFA's Farm Bill platform. So now I'll turn it back, I believe, to Heather.
So if you could advance the slide, Lauren, I'm going to talk just a little bit about support for beginning and BIPOC farmers. And I would just like to start by saying that I know that many of the people who are here this evening are beginning farmers. And I would really like to thank you for your efforts to build a better food and farm system, and for the way that you have persistently pursued that vision in the face of many challenges and obstacles. Farming requires a tremendous level of resource, and it's currently very difficult for new farmers to access the resources that they need. And that is especially true for young farmers who are just getting started, and also for Black, Indigenous, and other farmers of color. And I was recently having a conversation with one of our members, and I had the insight that addressing consolidation in agriculture, as Emily just described, and supporting beginning farmers are two sides of the same coin. Because if we want to have a just farm system, we need to work simultaneously on both of those issues, on eliminating subsidies for a few large growers and also increasing support for new farmers who are trying new things. And to be able to provide that support for new farmers, we need to understand what the key resources for success in farming are. And I've listed a few of those here on this slide: access to land, to funding opportunities, to credit, training and technical assistance, access to markets, to research, and to risk management options. And there's probably others that I didn't think of, but those are a few. We need to understand what are the obstacles, which include but are not limited to structural racism that people face in accessing those resources. And Emily earlier described some of the progress from the previous Farm Bill. And as she said, there still is a lot more that needs to be done on this issue. So I'm really hoping that in a few minutes when we do the breakouts that you will join our beginning and BIPOC farmer breakout so that we can go a little bit more into depth on that topic. And I'm going to pass it over now to Julia, who is going to talk about support for research.
Sure, and I'll just join Heather and Emily in giving a plug for this working group because it's going to be really fun. Let me just tell you about my favorite part of my day. Okay, let's back up a second. My favorite part of my day was a meeting that I had with the Farmer Researcher Network in Ohio. There are several members of that group present: Jonathan Greer, Dave Shively, John Stock, and that group is one made up of OEFFA members and farmers, also of our colleagues from the Ohio State University and Central State University, and OEFFA staff. And what the group's working on is coming together to try to create on-farm research opportunities, answering the questions that farmers actually have on the ground, working in close partnership with researchers to get farmer needs met and to utilize the expertise of our land grant institutions in reaching those farmer needs. That, to me, is how we should be doing research, but we can't do it without the funding opportunities through the Farm Bill. And that group, that was literally the best hour of my day until maybe this meeting, was denied funding, even though it had this grassroots focus, this really foundational mission, and this really important work that it wanted to do. This is not a surprise to OEFFA members, as you can see on this slide, because when we asked OEFFA members what they thought was important to do in the Farm Bill, they said, we need more organic and sustainable research. We need farmers that utilize these holistic, synergistic suites of agroecological practices. By the way, that's an Emily coined phrase. Should see a fair share of federal research dollars directed towards their practices, and they don't right now. We want to change that. We're going to be working on that in the working group, which I'm sure you want to join. We also need long-term agroecological research. Organic research isn't a short-term gig, neither is organic production, right? OEFFA farmers already know this, so they said we need to go ahead and change that. We're going to be working on that in this working group, which I know you want to join. We also need to see farm policy based on science that shows relationships between food and wellness, not the least of which is nutrient-dense food for our communities. So I know you want to join. I'm going to say it one more time. I know you want to join the research working group, and I look forward to seeing you there shortly. I'll pass it back.
So our next step here is to go out into our breakout rooms. This is a first of 2 rounds. Heather, you're going to share the breakout rooms here in a second, and you'll be able to choose which room you would like to join out of the 2 climate and consolidation. So if you want to go ahead and choose those and join them, if you have any questions, you can unmute or put it in the chat, but really you just go into that room that Heather just released and pick which one you want to join. Heather and I will be in the climate section, and Julia and Emily will be in the consolidation section.
And we have, remind us how much time we have, Heather, when we should come back.
It is set to automatically return us after 18 minutes.
18 minutes. Okay. We're going to get right to it then. Hello, everybody. I know we're going to have some more folks joining us in a bit. Sometimes it takes a minute for folks to figure out what work group they want to be in. I don't know, when I was hearing Julia, I'll wait till Julia's on so she can hear me talking about her. When I was hearing Julia plug in our work group so well, I thought, I'm really glad she doesn't sell like chemicals for the ag industry.
I did have a strong interest in advertising at one time. It's better to do this work. I had a feeling that the research group might fall second shift or a little bit behind the other. I mean, consolidation is a little bit more sexy than research, let's be real. And I wanted to make sure folks knew.
Good. No, that's good. Well, it was interesting because, you know, I put a comment in the chat because it's clear that like this issue of food system consolidation clearly has effects on so many different areas of the food and ag system, whether it's the beginning farmer issues, whether it's where we put our research dollars, whether we can have local and regional food systems. I mean, the whole bit, it's all connected, and it's all, you know, in some way influenced by that basic structure of the way the Farm Bill's set up. So there's Stacy. Welcome, Stacy. So we have probably about 15 or so minutes left, but you know, this is really an unstructured conversation. Really, you know, I've got a few really loose guiding questions, but really wanted to hear feedback from all of you tonight. And I'd really just like to start with the question of how you feel this issue of consolidation is affecting farmers and how you feel it's affecting communities.
I can jump into that. I think that one of the biggest things that I think, well, the consolidation of the whole, you know, farming industry, I think it allows it to kind of externalize some of the costs of the pollution of the whole industry. So just with the sort of omnipresence of the renewable fuel standard and the kind of you know, owning acreage that can be farmed and via row crops kind of almost guarantees a return on investment, you know, if you get the yields. And it's sort of, it externalizes like the cost of the pollution that kind of results from all those extra nutrients and things like that. And I think that, you know, advocating for, you know, more sustainable systems, and then also just food production that's more geared towards the commodities and products that are being consumed locally, is a really important counterweight to like that sort of overarching policy, which is pushing, dollars towards these, towards essentially like the industrialized food, a lot of which is, going to ethanol production, biodiesel, so on and so forth.
Thank you, Ben. That was really the issue of externalizing the costs of production is definitely an important one.
Emily, I'm taking notes. I wanted to
You
get all
are?
of Ben.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to get all of Ben's thoughts there.
Yeah, thank you. I took some of it down too. Anybody else have any thoughts that they want to share about how it maybe affects them as a farmer or affects? Yeah, Marty, go ahead.
This isn't something that comes up a lot when we talk about consolidation, but when I was young, there used to be a lot of farm stores around and you go in and get supplies. Like I always need something for the cattle. I just always need something. And those farm stores, they're gone. And so now, what am I going to do? Go to Home Depot? And, the employees there don't know anything about anything anyway. So I order stuff from catalogs. But when I think about the importance that those farm stores had for the community, because we could get stuff there and they also employed people, and as all those small, mostly mom and pop stores have closed, it's really created a lack of places to get stuff.
That's a great point, Marty. And I think even a lot of the processing and retail infrastructure, contributed to rural communities. Somebody else was going to jump in.
I think I mistakenly unmuted myself, but I'll go ahead and jump in.
Okay.
As someone who has considered dipping my toes into farming while also, doing a regular full-time job during the day, I found that it's really hard to find any kind of farmland that is under, 10 acres, because the folks who have farmed before on a lot of acreage are ready to parcel out their land to the next subdivision buyer, but they're not ready to pass it down for a price that someone who doesn't want to build housing can actually afford on the acreage that would be suitable for a small scale operation.
Thank you, Jane. Steve, it's good to see you. Do you have any thoughts on consolidation and how it affects farmers and communities?
Can you hear me at all?
Yeah.
Oh, can you? Oh, good. I wasn't sure I was hooked up that way. I just got in here. I'm just trying to get a feel for what you're talking about, how you're going about this. So sure, right now I'm just listening.
Okay. Well, if you think about anything, let us know. Anybody else on that have feedback on that first question?
I think when we think about food processing, having so few places that process food and few companies that are in control of our food, like we saw that even with like the Similac plant in Michigan, it's a quarter of the formula market. You see that when Smithfield stopped being able to process hogs, like there needs to be redundancy built into the system so that the smaller processing companies can thrive and provide the service so that people have food.
Thank you. Yeah, hopefully we will learn from those lessons of the COVID pandemic in 2020 about the importance of having some of those redundancies. And that's like a really good segue, because I think it's important to not just talk about the bad, but talk about where we've got some opportunities too. And, there have been many administrations who've talked about doing things about consolidation in the food system, who've talked about fixing contract agriculture that is not transparent or fair for especially poultry farmers. But I would say that the current administration is more interested than most in the past. They've hired 2 kind of antitrust leaders in key positions to address consolidation issues. And there's some active rulemaking right now about contract agriculture. So I think it's important to say that there's an opportunity now. There's an opportunity both administratively, with the Biden administration, but there's also an opportunity with the Farm Bill. There have been marker bills introduced in the past to try and deal with the issue of consolidation a little bit, and I'm sure we're going to see some again. So I think, one of the things to talk more about these working groups, I'm excited about having 5 working groups for each one of these priorities, because we're going to take those marker bills as they start being released. And we're going to be able to look at those and go through those with a fine-tooth comb and figure out what they mean, what's good about them, what's bad about them, if there's something we want changed, if there's something we want added. We can communicate with our members of Congress to make sure and advocate that those changes are made. Anybody else have any other thoughts about this issue of antitrust, or what they think we should be doing now?
Anybody have anything to say on seeds? Consolidation of the seed industry? Ben?
Yeah, I mean, it's, well, I mean, I think that the difficulty that I find, I mean, we grow produce, so, there certainly is, we certainly see the consolidation of it. I think and kind of like focused around seeds, I think the really interesting focal point for me is like, how do we maintain like the productivity levels that some of these, like, we see a lot of improvements with like newer hybridized seed varieties. We see a lot of yield improvements on our operation, and it's I think and that's kind of throughout the whole, I mean, a lot of this consolidation, it does produce a lot of economy of scale, and a lot of it, brings down the production costs, which, kind of can in turn make food more accessible to a lot of people. And I think what's really important to me is sort of preserving like that accessibility, but, also combating some of that consolidation and concentration within, some of that corporate power of like all of the decisions that kind of get made about, what seeds we grow, or who owns the seed supply.
It's interesting. We've done a lot of surveys of some of our farmer members since we've had the policy program here at OEFFA. I think that one of the recurring themes we always hear is that people want a more fair, a more level playing field. But I think it's hard to know, like, how do you do that? Where do you work? What do you work on to get to that? So there are these issues around antitrust. There are issues around contract agriculture. But another major structural issue for the Farm Bill is crop insurance. And the level of subsidies farmers get, who gets subsidies, and what they get subsidies for. Crop insurance, taxpayers subsidize about 62% of crop insurance policies on average, and crop insurance has tended to support commodity row crop production. We've had, we work with a colleague, or more than one colleague, who tried to develop this whole farm revenue protection that would help diversified farms and provide premium discounts. The more you diversify, wasn't really structured the way it should have been. It hasn't been really successful. But certainly the traditional model for crop insurance has been successful. And I have to say, I love it because, we had a listening session with Senator Sherrod Brown on Tuesday in Worcester, and a beginning organic grain farmer was there who said, I love crop insurance. It's great for commodity producers like me, but he felt that it should be like all the other Farm Bill programs where there's an adjusted gross income limit, and that farmers who are making millions of dollars a year perhaps shouldn't be getting over 60% of their crop insurance policy subsidized. So that's just another thing to think about when we think about how we get at this issue and create a more level playing field.
Just real quick on the crop insurance too. I personally would love to see crop insurance subsidy premiums tied to positive environmental outcomes, so that we weren't subsidizing the production, subsidizing production of crops, that had the possibility of flooding out because they were planted in a floodplain, or just the proper nutrient management practices, so that the taxpayers weren't subsidizing sort of like the some of the excess nutrients, which just end up as pollution in the waterways.
Thank you, Ben.
Crazy talk, Ben. Crazy talk. Don't go making so much sense all the time.
Oh, well, I think that's going to have to be the last word for our consolidation committee. We've got about 8 or 6 seconds left. Thank you for your ideas. I hope you'll consider being part of this ongoing work group. It's something we really need to address.
It was great to be part of the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Abby. Did we come back sooner than everybody else?
I think we did.
Oh, here, here they come.
I think that clock was just till the 1 minute warning.
Oh, is that what it was? Thank you, Milo.
Yeah.
So we could have talked about consolidation for another minute. Shoot.
Right.
We'll have to save it for the work group, I guess.
Yeah, sorry, Tanya, also that you got cut off there. I would love to hear more about that some other time.
So we're going to jump right into some new breakout groups. It's going to be the same process as before. Heather, you're going to put those together. Yeah. So this one's going to be 3 different ones, correct, Heather? So we'll have the local foods, beginning in BIPOC, and research, which Julia plugged really well. So we'll have 3 different groups this round. And, like Emily just said, we're going to have much more time to get into these topics deeper in the actual working groups as we move forward with those. And Heather will give more detail on how those are going to work going forward.
Can I ask a question that maybe for Heather to answer later, or maybe for you now, Lauren? If folks want, can they join more than one working group?
Sure, that would be fantastic.
I knew the answer, but I thought someone else might also be wondering that question.
Yeah, you don't have to choose like you're choosing the groups right now.
Yeah.
Julia, you definitely have a career in sales, I think.
Just having
Okay,
fun here, folks.
I'm going to go ahead and put the rooms up for people to select where they want to go.
Right. Research.
And those of you on the phone, if you want to let me know which group you want to be in, if you could say your phone number, maybe just your area code.
Hello again, Stacy.
Hello again. This time I'm off of mute. I forgot I was on mute last time.
I'm always really slow to get unmuted for some reason.
Yeah.
Charlie, it's good to see you.
You too. I was excited to see, the policy priorities. I'm a big proponent of all of them, especially with soil health right up there in #1.
Pretty critical. We're coming at it at the state and federal level at the same time. So Jonathan, Abby, Jane, and Tanya, great to see you. Someone on the phone. Milo's back up here. All right. So we've got about 10 or 15 minutes to talk about local and regional food systems. And I know some of you on the call are very involved in this issue. Maybe you're a grower, maybe you're an advocate, maybe you're a service provider. I guess my first question is, what's going well with local and regional food systems development in Ohio? Go ahead, Abby.
I think what's going well is we're doing a wonderful job of bringing new people into the industry. I think where we're failing is giving them the resources to grow and scale. So we are bringing a lot of beginning farmers on, and we're getting them on the land, but we are not providing them with the opportunity to obtain land of their own, whether that's capital or because we're not doing a good job with the intergenerational land transfer. So we're bringing more people in, but I feel that then people in local food get stuck and can't grow, get frustrated, and then leave. So.
Very well put, Abby.
I mean, over the years, obviously, there's been more of an increase in the public awareness and interest in local food and the market for local food. You see all these restaurants now that have, much more of their featured menu is based on seasonal local produce. I think that the farmers markets in general are doing really well, and a lot more people know about and are interested in CSAs.
I can speak a little bit to the topic of food waste, while not directly, in some ways, related to obviously part of the food system, sort of on the back end of it. I can speak to, so I work in the Franklin County region and help communities set up food scrap drop-off programs, and there is definitely an interest across communities. There is a portion of the population that is really interested in the topic, and I think as cities learn about these programs from one another, they are on board to do it as well, whether it's you know, a little thing they can do around sustainability and feel like they're making progress, or a little bit of like a copycat syndrome thing. It's hard to tell, but people generally are interested in composting as a concept and are willing to try it out. The number of these drop-offs over the last 3 years has increased from 0 to 11. So there's actually more drop-offs, but there's 11 communities that are participating with the City of Columbus, launching some next year. So I can definitely speak to just more kind of general interest in composting, whether that relates to small and ecological farming. I don't think that connection has been made yet.
But that's still a critical issue, Jane, and I'm glad you brought it up because, you know, the marker bill that Heather mentioned earlier on, the Agricultural Resilience Act, does have a whole section related to food waste. And it's a, you know, can be a valuable input. It can be an input that displaces synthetic input. And there's a lot of kind of climate implications for this whole issue. So it's a really important one for our food system. I'm curious, Charlie, working for an organization like Green Umbrella and the Greater Cincinnati Regional Food Policy Council, is this something you're all addressing too?
As far as compost? Yeah, certainly. I mean, well, one thing a few years ago, we were instrumental in advocating for and helping to compile a whole new chapter of the zoning code specifically geared towards urban agriculture and making that more accessible. Because previously things were just like embedded in other chapters and it was very difficult to know what you could or could not do. So that removed a lot of barriers, including I highly advocated for community scale composting and making composting something that was more accessible. So since then, we have seen a number of organizations that have popped up that have different scales of, you know, whether it's residential pickup or community drop-off locations or working with businesses. And then they sort of work together as a little ecosystem, and along with David Andre, who can do, you know, the larger hauling from Go Zero.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts? Jonathan, Milo, I don't know who's on the phone, but if you either want to share something that's going well or something where we are facing roadblocks or current needs.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Tanya.
Hi, this is one of the roadblocks we've been running into in Cuyahoga County in Cleveland is when one become an urban farmer here, most people when they start off, they try to lease the lots, the empty lots, and at one point Cuyahoga County would let you lease it for $2 a year. I'm not sure what it is now, but one of the problems I find that's been going on the last couple of years is after one have made the place beautiful and started farmers markets and have community events at their place and getting the community to come out and participate and find out what's going on. And one thing I've learned, when one starts an urban farm here in Cuyahoga County, like for example, with my farm, we have police come out and meet and greet the community. We have the city council come out and have events, and it kind of makes the neighborhood safe again, so to speak. And it kind of, if I cut my grass, everybody else cutting their grass. But one of the problems we keep having is if one become an urban farmer, here you been put 3-4 years in, now you have corporations coming in, buying your lot and getting rid of you. And a couple of good farms have been lost because of that. So right now, I'm a chairperson for the county committee here in Cuyahoga County. And one of the things I've been bringing up, me and several other co-chairs and other members, is land. One thing about land is we want to be able to own the land. If you work in the land 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's time for you to buy the land. If you've proven to the county that I've taken very good care of it, There are some changes in the community. You know, once you have a nice community, that cuts down on crime. When you cut down on crime, it makes the council person look good, the mayor looks good, the police have less work, people are more safer in their communities. Urban farming is, like I tell people, it's completely different than rural farming. And it's time for them to look at us and give us some credit, you know, and stop taking the land from people. They changed the rules when it came to having goats, you can have chickens now, you can have bees, but they never did anything about water. So we've been having a lot of urban farmers having problems with water, because at the beginning, when you're an urban farmer, a new farmer, they give you an opportunity to use a permit so you can use a fire hydrant. But after 3 to 4 or 5 years, once you start to sell anything on your property, like in a farmer's market or share, they don't let you use the permit anymore. You have to get your own water. So now you're stuck with how much it costs to get water on your property. $5,000, $10,000, $12,000. So that's kind of one of the things that a lot of farmers are dealing with here now.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting to hear, Tanya. I know Cleveland has been really progressive, and I remember when they came out with the plan that included a lot of like urban agriculture and community gardening about 15 or more years ago. They still had it designated as a temporary land use.
Yep. So that's frustrating. Thankfully I own my half an acre, and I'm working on another partial, actually another 4 parcels that's connected. And so it's just a matter of paperwork and getting it signed and taken care of. But I'm just so busy. I had to recently get a shipping container because of theft. You know, you work your tail off, and my place is fenced around the half an acre, but we've had 3 break-ins. You know, so that's a challenge. Not letting the community know, hey, you don't have to steal from me. I'm on your side. You know, I'm helping you. I'm giving out free tomatoes or having nice events, trying to make the neighborhood. So it's just about, you know, getting the word out, letting the people at the top know why we're here, and not just a high tunnel thinking they grow food over there. So that's what we're working on now in Cleveland, to get the people at the top, including state representatives and anybody else who'll listen, to let them know when the money come to Ohio, hey, we would like our check too. You know, because it's a lot of money out here. And then we urban farmers, no matter if you're in Cincinnati or Cuyahoga County, we should be able to get some of it, and not alone. You know, they always having a person from the Federalist, what is that? Farm Service Agency talking about, I'm the lone person. And I had to shut it down recently. I said, I appreciate you coming to this event. No disrespect, but urban farmers aren't looking for loans. We don't have $100,000 tractor to put up for lateral. So don't come talking to urban farmers for about a loan. They call it grants. We call it grants. They call it programs. So we need finance, and we need the people at the top to know what are we doing in the community and help us get the word out. Hey, these are urban farmers. We have a place here in Cleveland called the Farmers Market on West 25th. It's real famous, real popular, the market. Our residents do not know that those people at the farmers market on West 25th go to 55th Street to a warehouse and get their produce at 3 to 4 in the morning that come from Mexico and all around the world. People don't realize, well, what are we doing here? We're growing food, we fresh honey. You know, one of our farmers, he has bees. He made a beautiful lip balm recently. You know, we were proud of him for that. We need refrigeration. It's just, you know, all the work that we do and all the climate change we're trying to do. It'd be nice to have people at the top that can make a difference help. I'm sorry for being long-winded.
No, thank you, Tanya. And you've got some good people up there. You've got State Representative Juanita Brent.
Yeah.
And you've got Chantel Brown, right?
I know every last one of them. And they've heard my fussing. I recently met State Secretary Juanita, what's her name? Secretary of Agriculture. I met her recently. And I put a bug in her ear too. Hi, this is who I am. There's more than one urban farmer here in Ohio. We need a little help here.
I'm glad you're vocal, Tanya.
Yeah, they call me a little fire pistol because I've been an urban farmer for 12 years now. I took a raggedy, vacant lot, a lot that was tires and debris, and turned it into a beautiful green space. And I have all the accolades to prove it. But at the same time, it doesn't help if the people at the top don't respect it. They don't understand what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
Every
Yeah.
summer I teach summer youth kids here in the city of Cleveland. I teach them how to grow food, but I don't always just teach them how to grow food. I teach them how to be respectful to other people, how to be an entrepreneur if you're interested. Everybody's not college material. So I teach a lot of things. And then this past summer, I found that I had 4 kids with bipolar disorder. So the parents is usually pacifying them at home, but when they come to me, they don't get pacified. They get the real world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just said it'd be nice to have a little help when, as urban farmers, get some help, because with a lot of farming is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Long hours, you're out there in the sun, you're trying to make a difference in health, different things. It'd just be nice to get some people at the top to help us.
Well, thank you for that feedback, Tiffany. Jonathan, were you going to hop in?
I was just going to say, so I'm in a rural in Appalachia community. So, we need there's not a lot of strong systems that are in place there too. So oftentimes, we share resources from county to county. And if you don't have access to who to go to, who then to network with, who to work with, what committees are available. So I would say being out here in rural, and I'm a beginning farmer, a lot of what we've had to do is been independent. We've had to find out on our own. We have to go through a lot of different hoops and loops and bumps in the road. And I think some of those systems can be strengthened internally within the rural communities. And there could be some ways then that there could be some collaboration, or at least even access. So when you don't have some of the access, and so that's why I was looking at this working group along with another working group to the reality comes back to access when it comes to being a Black farmer. So systems sometimes are not available, or you don't have the access to even find out about them, to even be able to get involved in them. So those are huge. Those are huge as well when you're wanting to start off and really, expand what you're doing, and then get to a place where you can then grow.
So you need more access. You need more people that are making folks aware of what's available to them. And to Tanya's point, beyond loans, right?
Right. Right. And then, because sometimes there's not enough money in that pool as well. We look at the amount of finance, but if that finance is stretched out, like with the EQIP application, it's stretched out across the whole state. If you got a couple $1,000,000, that's not a lot of money when it's going across the whole entire state. And then if you don't have access to it, you could be applying 2 to 3 years without getting anywhere.
Yeah, and one of the things that some folks don't know, I guess we've got not a lot of time left, but there's a state technical committee at NRCS that sets all the priorities, sets priorities for the state, sets priorities for EQIP. How many folks in urban communities or rural Appalachian communities or Black communities know that they could be, involved with the state tech committee, and that they could help shape what some of those state priorities are, Yeah.
Well, I'm helping with the farm bill for next year.
Good. Well, feel free to send along any other ideas or thoughts you have about other ways we need to can improve local and regional food systems, because it has been a priority for OEFFA for a long time, and it will continue to be. So thank you all.
And we're back.
Okay, I think Heather is going to take us to our next to last step here with our couple of slides to keep us on track. I hope you all had some good conversations. I know we did. And I know we're going to continue to have good conversations in these 5 working groups. And, you know, I'm sure Heather will talk a little bit about that shortly.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you everyone so much for joining us this evening to learn a little bit about our Farm Bill platform. And I just want to talk a little bit now about some of the ways that you can become involved in this work. OEFFA is, we're going to, over the next year, our policy team is going to be putting a lot of focus on the Farm Bill and on the 5 planks of the Farm Bill that we mentioned tonight. And we are going to be forming working groups. And those groups are going to meet probably maybe 3 times throughout this fall. Meetings are most likely going to be virtually so that we can have participation from everyone, throughout the state, to really dig into some of these topics in greater depth, and then also to come up with very specific recommendations, and then also a little bit of a strategy about how we can work with our members of Congress to really to advocate for the changes that we want to see. So if you have an interest in being in one, or as we said earlier, one or more of those working groups, you should just be in touch with me. My email should be up there on the screen. It's just heather@OEFFA.org, or you can talk to Emily. So that's going to be a really big one. But even if you don't want to be in one of the working groups, or you can't be in one of the working groups, we're also always looking for people who are willing to write letters to the editor, to share your stories and experiences, maybe to call or meet with your members of Congress. So, feel free to be in touch with me. I would definitely like, if even if you can't be in one of the working groups, there are definitely some other ways that you could be involved. Also, I just want to make a pitch. I think many of the people here are already members of OEFFA, but if you're not, I hope that you would consider becoming a member of OEFFA. We have a wealth of resources that we offer for farmers and for community food activists, from our Begin Farming program to our annual conference, to support, how we can provide support for farmers who are considering transitioning to organic, to the policy work that we're doing here, and much more. And we would really be delighted to have you join us as a member, and you can get more information about how to do that on our website at OEFFA.org. And then also we will be sending out a follow-up email over the next few days to let you know how you can become more involved. So again, just thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I'm going to turn it over to Emily for a few final words.
Yeah, get off mute. Okay, thank you, Heather. I just want to say another thank you for sharing your thoughts with us tonight. Please visit our Farm Bill page at action.oeffa.org for updates. As Heather said, those work groups, they'll probably start in October, maybe run through February or March, and just 3 or 4 meetings, as Heather mentioned. This is an incredible opportunity to have a very real impact on the future of our food system. It really makes a difference. In closing, I'd just like to say that share one more of OEFFA's beliefs, which is that democracy belongs to us, and it's up to us to ensure that it is based in community. So thank you, and we hope to talk to you again soon. Night, everyone.
Thank you.